Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is March 12th, 2026, and we are going to read from Exodus chapter 23 and John chapter 2. All right, so we're going to continue in Exodus with God giving Moses various case laws, I guess is the best way to say it, specific offenses, specific punishments for these, but they all come out of the Ten Commandments somehow, kind of expanding on what exactly constitutes a violation. Let's see, the pericope I have here is justice for all, then it's going to be Sabbaths, and then it's going to talk about feasts, and then the angel, and we'll talk about that when we get to it in the promises. So let's go ahead and start with Exodus chapter 23. You shall not circulate a false report. Do not put your hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. You shall not follow a crowd to do evil, nor shall you testify in a dispute so as to turn aside after many to pervert justice. You shall not show partiality to a poor man in his dispute. If you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, you shall surely bring it back to him again. If you see the donkey of one who hates you lying under its burden, and you would refrain from helping it, you shall surely help him with it. You shall not pervert the judgment of your poor in his dispute. Keep yourself far from a false matter. Do not kill the innocent and righteous, for I will not justify the wicked. And you shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds the discerning and perverts the words of the righteous. Also, you shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the heart of a stranger, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. So fair in everything. Fairness and honesty. Don't take bribes. Don't ignore somebody who's in trouble, even if they're your enemies. Help them out. Help who you can. Verse 10, 6 years you shall sow your land and gather in its produce, but the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie fallow, that the poor of your people may eat, and what they leave the beasts of the field may eat. In like manner you shall do with your vineyard and your olive grove. 6 days you shall do your work, and on the 7th day you shall rest, that your ox and your donkey may rest, and the son of your female servant and the stranger may be refreshed. And in all that I have said to you, be circumspect, and make no mention of the name of other gods, nor let it be heard from your mouth. 3 times you shall keep a feast to me in the year. You shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. You shall eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded you at the time appointed in the month of Abib, for in it you came out of Egypt. None shall appear before me empty. And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of your labors, which you have sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering at the end of the year, when you have gathered in the fruit of your labors from the field. Now, occasionally the names are a little bit different as we move through the Old Testament, but those are the main 3 feasts. 3 times in the year all your males shall appear before the Lord God. And you shall not offer the blood of my sacrifices with leavened bread, nor shall the fat of my sacrifice remain until morning. The first of the first fruits of your land you shall bring into the house of the Lord your God. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. Now he's going to talk about the angel of God. And what we want to see is he's describing the Son, because he describes this as a distinct person, but he says he's completely equal to me. Now, the regular angel is not completely equal to God. You don't worship angels. Angels don't have any authority except what's given them by God to go do whatever they're supposed to do. But this angel of the Lord is different, and he's described differently. And we want to see that that's the pre-incarnate Christ. Before Christ comes physically, He's eternal. He still is involved in the creation. He's still involved in all of the Old Testament. But he's not directly involved until we get to the New Testament, when he comes in his bodily form, and now he's can add divinely human to, 100% human to his 100% divinity. And that's when he completes that role. But he was always there, and he's always involved. Let's go ahead. We're going to pick it up at verse 20. Behold, I send an angel before you to keep you in the way and to bring you into the place where I have prepared. So that leading fire and the cyclone, that's Jesus. Beware of him and obey his voice. Do not provoke him, for he will not pardon your transgressions. For my name is in him. That's where he's saying he's God. But if you indeed obey his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and an adversary to your adversaries. For my angel will go before you and bring you into the Amorites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, and I will cut them off. So he's the one that led them into the promised land. You shall not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do according to their works, but you shall utterly overthrow them and completely break down their sacred pillars. They are enemies of God, and we've seen all of their origin stories that they chose to be enemies of God, and God is going to treat them as his enemies. Verse 25, so you shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will take sickness away from the midst of you. No one shall suffer miscarriage or be barren in your land. I will fulfill the number of your days. There's a promise that people love to quote, but understand that promise had a lot attached to it. You had to obey God impeccably and lean on him totally, which didn't happen. Verse 27, I will send my fear before you. I will cause confusion among all the people to whom you come, and will make all your enemies turn their backs to you. And I will send hornets before you, which shall drive out the Hivite, the Canaanite, and the Hittite from before you. I will not drive them out from before you in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the beasts of the field become too numerous for you. Little by little I will drive them out from before you until you have increased and you inherit the land. And I will set your bounds from the Red Sea to the sea, Philistia, and from the desert to the river. For I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hands, and you shall drive them out before you. It's interesting. He says, I'm not going to drive them out right away, because if I do, the land will be empty and it'll be overrun, and that'll be even harder for you. So I'm going to, as you expand, we're going to push them out. Verse 32, you shall make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it will surely be a snare to you. And people want to say, oh, he's so bloodthirsty because he asked for complete destruction. But that's why the complete destruction was a command. Because he knew that if they mixed together, the other gods, the idols, would take over. And that's exactly what we see here. So that was, push them out. We don't want their falseness anymore. That has to all go. Now we see the individuals were different. As a people, they're evil. As a people, they're enemies of God. As a people, they worship false idols. As a people, they have to be destroyed and pushed out. Don't assimilate with them, because they're going to mustard seeds, leaven. We've seen those symbols before. You let them go, it's just like a little piece of leaven. Their false gods are going to take over. And that's exactly what we're going to see as we continue. So he's bringing them into it as a nation, forming them as a nation, and setting them apart and saying, you are different from them. You have different rules for them. You have these Sabbath rules that they don't have. You have feasts where you're celebrating me, not yourselves. They're not orgies and wild parties. You're remembering what I've done for you to bring you out. Don't mix with them. All right, let's move over to John chapter 2. Now John, this is the first miracle he's going to show us. And actually he calls it a sign. Doesn't call them miracles. He calls them signs. Signs point to things. And he's saying this is pointing to Jesus as God. When I saw him do this, this is when I started to think he might be God. Because that's what John is essentially telling us in his gospel is, why did I believe he was God? He writes his gospel later than the other three. So he's aware of the other three, and he's saying, I'm not going to rewrite what they wrote. I'm going to fill in some of the blanks that they left. The other three gospels want to tell us this is Jesus. This is why you should believe he's God, because he fulfills the scriptures. This is why you believe he's God, because of the things he does. And John says, okay, this is why I believed he was God, and you should believe because that's what I saw, and I'm telling you what I saw. Why this as the first sign? Don't the other ones start with him going into the desert and being tempted? Yes. John's going to start with this story as the first sign of his ministry. Which is the first story? Well, let's start with John chapter 2. On the third day there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Now both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. All right, so that would be a big deal. As the groom, you're supposed to put on this big party, and you're supposed to satisfy everyone's need. And you run out of wine in the middle of the party, people are going to be upset. Why would they go to Jesus' mother? Well, apparently they must be related somehow, I would assume. So they're part of the groom's family that realize, oh no, we're going to run out of wine right in the middle. And people are going to really start talking about how horrible we are, that we ran out of wine. And they go to his mother and tell her, and she comes to tell Jesus. And Jesus replies in verse 4, Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." Kind of rebuke to his mother. Not a gentle rebuke, but he's essentially saying, hey, I'm the Son of God. Why are you bothering me with this petty stuff? Verse 5, his mother said to the servants, whatever he says to you, do it. So she kind of rebukes him back and says, you're the Son of God, you ought to start doing it. You're just hanging around at a party. So what happens next? Well, we're going to see that in verse 6. Now there were set there 6 water pots of stone, according to the manner of purification for the Jews, containing 20 or 30 gallons apiece. Jesus said to them, fill the water pots with water. And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, draw some out now and take it to the master of the feast. And they took it. When the master of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine and did not know where it come from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom, and he said to him, every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and when the guests have well drunk, then the inferior. You have kept the good wine until now. So he didn't just turn it into wine, he turned it into good wine. This is a miracle. And what is the sign? It's pointing to Jesus that he can create wine out of water. He can create something out of nothing. There's something only God could do. So John says that's the first miracle that I saw him do. We all knew it was water that went into these pots. We helped fill the pots up. It was water. And when we took it out, it was wine. Verse 11. This, the beginning of signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So everybody understood that was something only a God could do. And Jesus is something special. Verse 12. After this he went down to Capernaum, he, his mother, his brothers, and his disciples, and they did not stay there many days. Now they didn't no mention of Joseph, so assume by now he's out of the picture, but we don't know how. Maybe he's dead. Maybe he stayed back in Nazareth to run the business. But ancient writings, the story's about Jesus, not about Joseph. So when we see the story of David in our Bible, hey, Jesse's his dad, and that's it, and we don't ever talk about Jesse anymore. So something to be aware of as we read. We don't know what happened to Joseph. Verse 13. Now the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now John has Jesus go 3 times to Jerusalem for the Passover. All the other Gospels only once, and at the very end of his ministry. Now, every Jew would have went to Jerusalem for the Passover. Every male Jew was supposed to go there if they could. So 3 is probably the right number, but the other Gospels are only concerned with that last one because that's when things kind of came to a head. John wants us to see Jesus the way he saw him. So John is traveling with Jesus, and this is their first visit to Jerusalem with John as his disciple. Verse 14, and he found in the temple those who sold oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers doing business. When he had made a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the changers' money and overturned the tables. And he said to those who sold doves, take these things away. Do not make my Father's house a house of merchandise. Then his disciples remembered that it was written, zeal for your house has eaten me up. All right, so the other Gospels only have it once. And at the end, John puts it right at the beginning. Now, either they're wrong, or you know what? Yeah, Jesus did it more than once. And guess what? He probably did do it more than once. Because the money changers were always there, and as soon as he chased them away, as soon as he left, they would have come back. And that's kind of something we want to see with Jesus is, you know what, whenever he went to the temple and saw these people doing wrong, he stepped forward and said, no, this is wrong. I don't care if they're letting you do it. This is wrong. You all know it. Get out of here. Zeal for your house has eaten me up. There's another God statement. That God, God is upset that you're doing this. And I'm here to tell you God is upset that you're doing this. Even if the Pharisees and the Sadducees won't tell you, I'm going to tell you. And he's not mean and he's not nasty and he's not whipping people left and right. He just chases them out. And the Pharisees come and say, what sign do you show to us since you do these things? Well, what gives you the right to tell us to get out of here? And that's when Jesus answers in 19, and said to them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will rise it up. So right off the bat, John gives us a statement about his death. Saying, hey, you know what? You're going to kill me, and I'm going to rise in 3 days. That's what gives me the authority to tell you to stop doing this in the temple. Verse 21, but he was speaking of the temple of his body. Therefore, when he had risen from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this to them, and they believed the scripture and the word which Jesus had said. So John is much more going to connect us in his gospel to okay, yeah, now we didn't know it then, but after he rose, we knew it. And he's going to say, and then we remembered back here. So he does a much better job of letting us know that they were wrong, but they got it eventually. Verse 23, now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover during the feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs which he did. But Jesus did not commit himself to them because he knew all men, and had no need that anyone should testify of man, for he knew what was in man. That's an interesting idea. So they flocked to Jesus. Jesus isn't swayed by them flocking to him, because he says, yeah, all right, most of you are going to be yelling, crucify me in 3 years. I know that. You're not impressing me by bowing down to me right now. I know who you are, and I'm here to reveal it to you, and reveal to you your need for me to be your Savior. Because I know what's in the man. May God bless reading his word. May God bless you. Bye.